Just a disclaimer, the opinions expressed in this podcast are our own views and views of our guests. Nothing in this podcast is to be taken as legal advice.
Your LexisNexis legal research and AI technology experience is now even more powerful with Lexis Plus AI, now with Protégé, your personalised AI assistant that will transform your legal work. Find out more today at lexisnexis.co.nz.
Kia ora, tēnā koe, and welcome to That's Just Criminal. With me, Annabel Creswell, and my co-host, Sumudu Thode. Today, we're going to talk about whether or not there have been serial killers in New Zealand. It's one of those topics that's often discussed and debated at dinner parties. Do we have them? Have we had them? And so we've got who with us today in the studio, Sumudu, to discuss it with?
We've got Scott Beard in the studio today. So Scott is a detective inspector who's worked on a number of high-profile cases, starting from Operation Stockholm. He was the lead detective in Grace Millane, which is a case that we'll all know about.
And really needs no introduction, does he, Sumudu? And we've also seen that Scott's talked on other podcasts and been in the public eye a fair amount.
Definitely. Welcome, Scott.
Welcome, Scott, yes.
Thank you very much, ladies. It's a pleasure to be here.
We thought you'd be a good person to discuss this with, whether or not there have been actual serial killers in New Zealand, because I think a number of members of our public think that we live in this safe little country and things like those horrific overseas American and Canadian serial killers that we hear about wouldn't happen here in New Zealand. But if not, why not? A good example would be the Grace Millane case. The guy that murdered Grace Millane, Jesse Kempson, it seems apparent to me that he would have gone on to kill probably from the next day. It sounds like he was setting up to go and maybe kill a girl the very next day. Is that the impression you have? But you caught him.
Yeah, the impression I always got, and I've said this publicly, is that he was leading up. There was incidents he had with female victims, which was leading up to what he did to Grace.
Yeah.
And there's some very fortunate ladies out there who,
Yes.
through no fault of their own, they met on Tinder, they go and they end up back at his apartment, and then he would just flip. So he'd be so nice, and he'd go to it, come out, and he'd flip. And there's a couple who gave evidence. They thought they were lucky to alive. One person escaped from his apartment because she thought, this is going bad, I don't know what's going to happen to me. Another one was really suffocated, and unfortunately, Grace suffered and was murdered. If it wasn't Grace, it was going to be someone.
Because the next day he went out with another girl and she got the creeps feel and kind of made an excuse to get away, right?
Absolutely. Grace is lying dead in his room and he goes out on another Tinder date.
Yeah. And so if she hadn't got creeped out and gone away, just wonder if he was going to do that. And then if he could have got away with it, another one the next day.
Just keep going.
Because he's hit that, but he's building up to it. With Grace, he's done it. So it wasn't going to de-escalate, was he?
No. And he planned, first thing on that Sunday morning, he goes and buys a suitcase.
So messed up.
All the planning that went into it.
So definitely technology is a big part of it, right? But then even looking back to the 80s or even 70s, was there ever a situation in New Zealand where bodies were turning up or people were going missing and police were thinking this might be one guy, we might be able to link these?
Yeah, I've worked on some cases where the same person has killed a couple of different people at different times.
What about Hayden Poulter? Because I guess people call him the first serial killer of New Zealand. Is that a case that you worked on?
I was working in Auckland City at the time, and I remember the homicide, the prostitute up on Karanga Happy Road and Simon Street and murdered there in the park. Then, was it nearly a week later, he's down at the massage parlour in Fort Street and he murdered another prostitute and the manager there. And then he comes to the police station, hands himself in with the knife.
After the first murder, which is the lady that was found at Pigeon Park, he actually contacted the newsroom and said that that was his fourth murder.
I wasn't aware of that. But look, police would have looked at and gone out, well, what missing people do we have? And do we look at Hayden Poulter and how can we link him to any of those missing persons?
I mean, Sumudu's just showing off because as I said, we do no research for this podcast. We
I
just
read
rely
one
on
article.
we rely on our speakers just to have good
Tell us.
stories. Like police officers always have good work stories. But Sumudu, I know, while she was sitting in court today, she Googled serial killers, and that's what came up, was that there's only been one in New Zealand, and that was Hayden Poulter.
I'm pretty much an expert now. Yeah, he turned up at the police station, right, with the bloodied knife from the massage parlour.
Yep.
But why would he do that?
Because he's a psychopath.
Well, that's another interesting thing, actually, is, you might not have dealt with serial killers, but you definitely have dealt with psychopaths, right?
Yes, definitely.
What do you think makes a psychopath become a serial killer?
I think the fact, if they get away with it, and it's that thrill, sometimes it's the thrill of the chase. Can they get away with it again? And then can they get away with it again and again? And I think that's what you get over in the States a little bit.
Yeah. So why do we get it over in the States and not here?
In general, I think we're such a small country. United States is a vast, huge area and a huge population. And most people tend to know if someone's going off the rails in that way.
Yes.
And so we'd get reports, and whether it be anonymous or people contact Crime Stoppers or the police.
Do you think, we've talked a lot about media, but in the States, not all murders will get the media attention just because there's probably so many, whereas New Zealand's the complete opposite. Every time there's a homicide, it's front page news. Do you think that sort of plays some part in it? It's harder to go under the radar?
There's a difference, like in New Zealand, we have so many family violence homicides. And you take the Grace Millane case. During that investigation, we had 2 family violence homicides in New Zealand. Now, they got a paragraph in the paper, but the missing person is a totally different scenario.
And there's that white woman syndrome, isn't there, as well, which is getting worse because of podcasts probably just like this that sensationalise the killing of missing white women. Have you heard about that, white woman syndrome?
Yeah, I have. I think whenever it's an overseas tourist, and if I look at the Swedish couple, Heidi, Paakkonen and Hoglin, they were international. And a lot of times when we have an overseas tourist who goes missing or is murdered, there is a lot of media, because there's a lot of media from across the world. Like Grace Millane, for instance, the British press were onto it very early, and the New Zealand editors were telling their staff, don't let the Brits get a scoop. And so within the media itself, there's a frenzy. And it wasn't a long investigation. It came in on the Wednesday, and by the Saturday, we had charged Kempson, and on the Sunday, we found Grace.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it affects the New Zealand sort of tourism, image and all of that as well. So it's not just dealing with the violence or the homicide, you're sort of dealing with New Zealand's image in its entirety.
Yeah, clean, green New Zealand, and suddenly you have something like that happen.
Do you have any other examples of meeting people like that where you sort of dead behind the eyes type, I know this guy is a killer?
Yeah, there was the Operation Sundown, which was the murder of Joanne McCarthy in November 1998 in Whangaparaoa Road up on the Hibiscus Coast.
Yeah.
And was also linked back to the Tanya Furlan homicide 2 years earlier in Howick.
What was the link?
Our offender, Travis Burns, for Joanne McCarthy's homicide, he was friends of a guy, Christopher Lewis, and Christopher Lewis was ultimately charged, but Lewis always said, no, it was Burns. He always used to come and take my shoes and clothes and stuff like that. A reinvestigation couldn't prove Burns was the killer, but did that Christopher Lewis. But Christopher Lewis took his own life in prison before the trial started.
Oh.
It was just a very similar, like Joanne was murdered in front of her young child and a friend's child, and the same with Tanya Furlan in front of her children at the front door of the house.
So he would be an example of a serial killer if it could be proven, you think?
Yeah, I know the police did an investigation which couldn't prove that he committed that murder.
But you think so?
There was a description because the baby was taken from Tanya Furlan's house and put behind a church and only hung her, and the description they had of the person doing that did fit burns.
Yeah. Going back to you obviously met that guy, and did you think he was someone with those psychopathic tendencies, just wanted to be a killer?
His modus operandi, just his demeanour, for him, I just think it was the thrill of the chase. We're talking about midday on a house that is in a busy road, in Whangapara Road, one way in, one way out to Gulf Harbour. And he goes into the house, children are there, the music's on, they're playing, and he murders mum.
And there was no connection. They hadn't met before. There was nothing.
Well, this was the interesting fact. He had lived in a house where, because it was next to Sundown Reserve, where Joanne lived, and he had lived in a house where if you come across the back fence, you'd walk across Sundown Reserve, say to go to Little Manly Beach. So I think he would have
Been watching her.
seen her, and the unusual thing was she looked very similar to Tanya Thurman in appearance.
So there are people that have the MOs of a killer, but they just don't get very far in New Zealand, is what it is. Do you think?
Well, because in that case, Jane's case, she was put in the bath and bathwater was run. And ultimately, ESR, I think it's the first time in New Zealand history, found DNA under her fingernails because the body had been submerged underwater.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Because if that was a thing that he did, like leaving the tap on, and that was, or leaving them in water.
Like a signature move.
Yeah, a
thing.
signature calling card. So, remember there was in Russia, there was a guy that would find women that were selling their wedding dresses, and then he'd dress them up in them and then kill them and stuff like that. And he was a wedding dress killer. And there's not been anything like that, has there, in New Zealand, because they just don't get far enough to get clever.
No.
And was there any link in terms of the Howick murder as well? Anything similar in terms of the actual killing?
No, that they were both women were attacked at the front doors. The hammer was used, and it was in front of children.
So looking at some of the other overseas kind of serial killers, I was reading about do you remember the Bodies for Cash Canadian killer that in the 80s, he killed heaps of people. Police couldn't catch him. They didn't try very hard at first because they kept writing them all off and not linking them. And it was the 80s and they had different values. But eventually this serial killer said, I'll tell you where I've put the bodies of all these kids, but I want $10,000 a body. And the police agreed and paid out this huge amount to the serial killer. And then the public found out and were livid. Do you know that one?
No, I don't really. The sort of the 80s, I was new in the police.
I only just heard about it because of this resurgence of old cases now, that because of all the true crime that everyone's into. So I just heard about it or read about it recently. But what do you reckon would happen in New Zealand if the police agreed to something like that? Or do you think could you contemplate that ever happening?
For the offender, I don't think so at all. It just depends. Every case is different.
Someone says, well, just give me money and I'll tell you where the bodies are. But then they're profiting from their crime. Do you think that you could see how police might agree to do that just to get their bodies back to the parents? Or do you think that would just never happen here?
I understand getting, the families want their loved ones back. I totally understand that. But to pay somebody, if you're going to charge them, well then let them use it with that sentencing to get a reduced sentence. So I've got all the bodies back for them.
Is anyone else that you can think of that would qualify as potentially close to a serial killer in New Zealand?
Not that I know personally or have worked on, but look, you can't let your guard down. You never say that won't happen. I'd like to think that the technology and the perseverance and talent of the detectives in New Zealand, that would get onto it very early.
And stop them. That's what the public want. Your reassurance. You'd get them fast and stop them.
Your LexisNexis legal research and AI technology experience is now even more powerful with Lexis Plus AI, now with Protege, your personalized AI assistant that will transform your legal work. Find out more today at lexisnexis.co.nz. Now, back to the episode.
Sumudu and I have been discussing whether or not there is actually a Piha killer, and obviously there's been a TV3's documentary made on this recently, which has whetted appetites in New Zealand. And they talk about police maybe mishandling or overlooking things. Over the past few decades, 6 people at least have disappeared in or near Piha Beach, West Auckland, without a trace. A documentary was recently made titled Black Coast Vanishings, and that explored these disappearances and raised some unsettling questions. Could a serial killer be operating in the Piha area? And it looked at local stories of people being chased or stalked like prey. Coroners have reviewed the individual cases, and in the absence of firm wrongdoing have concluded most were likely accidental drownings or self-inflicted incidents. And they've usually blamed emotional distress or mental health issues and substance use. But online discussions and local chat sort of reflect more divergent views, suggesting foul play, abductions, or someone living locally and preying on individuals. Sumudu, who are these people and what do you know about the Piha victims?
Well, there seems to be 6 missing people. The first one was in 1992. It was a 17-year-old boy, and the inquest said that it was mostly to do with his mental health issues. And the second is probably the most famous one, which was Irina Asher. She went missing in 2004. The next 2 was a mum that went missing in December 2012 and another 21-year-old who went missing in March 2017. They went missing at the exact same spot in the running track at Mercer Bay Loop. And the last 2 was a young guy who went missing in March 2019. His car was found, but no body's ever been found. And the conclusion was that there was no evidence of foul play. And the latest one is Eloa, who was a French student who went missing in March 2020. And I guess with the changes in technology and investigation techniques, he's the only one whose cell phone was pinged to West Auckland. So that's how they knew that he was out in Piha. And again, no body's been found in any of those cases.
I think the issue is none of the bodies are found, no belongings are found. Like there's never any sign of anything. And then the coroners have always concluded accidental drowning, suicide, but there's never bodies. So it's hard enough doing any of our jobs where there's no evidence.
Body to say that there was a murder.
Yeah, but then police and coroners seem quite content to go, suicidal. Some of them had actually left suicide notes, I think.
I think one of them had, Quentin Godwin. Yeah, he'd left the suicide note and then he'd caught a taxi or something out to Piha. But then he came back and he told the taxi driver that he changed his mind.
Yeah.
So
he had broken up with someone, so you could go, yes, he was in a suicidal state, and he'd written something that could be a suicide note, but then everyone else
just
was
a really sad story, I'm feeling sad, I just write it down. That's not a suicide note all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, of course, police would be able to go, we'll just rule that out as suicide. But, of course, that's always been an issue. For centuries, police have written off murders as suicides because someone's vaguely depressed. But I mean, particularly in modern society, everyone's vaguely depressed. So that's not an indicator of suicide. So how many murders have been written off as suicide in Piha?
Well, I think that just seems to be the easy answer, right? This person was a bit sad. They'd broken up with their partner, they'd lost their job or whatever it is. And it just seems to be an explanation. But is that a good enough explanation for you?
Well, there's nothing to link them really other than the location. And they all do have explanations as to being accidents. I think what for me is concerning are all of the other stories you hear, and it's partly on the documentary, partly online, and partly talking to people, that there's women being stalked and chased by men out there. Filmmakers sort of made it really clear in the documentary that, these are just people's accounts and it's sort of hearsay. But there are so many people saying, I was stalked. There was guys were yelling, I don't feel safe.
And like the comments as well, like I think one of the girls was saying, the guys, there were one or two guys, I can't remember that one, but they were yelling, saying, come back here, I want to know what you taste like. So,
and little bitch, where's the little bitch gone?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah, so I think that is a big concern, and it could be that there are one or two stalkers out there, but I sort of want to know, well, police must be able to see now. We know more and more evidence that stalking is linked to killing. Scott, what's your overall thoughts on whether there is, in fact, a Piha serial killer?
So, yeah, I don't work in the Waimata district, so it's not my area of responsibility. But, obviously I've heard about it and seen the media articles and different things. I think if there was a line of inquiry and an evidential line of inquiry, the police would have followed that up. If there's not, it's hard to say, because we were talking about 6 individual cases. Now, could there be a serial killer out there? You can't say there's not. But my understanding is there's no actual evidence on each of those cases to suggest anything else. And we can't make the evidence up, unless we've got some information or someone gives us something to work on. They can only work with what they've got. And of course, it's all before the coroner, so there's a coroner's hearing, so you have to be careful what we say.
Yeah.
But they've all kind of looked at them individually, though, rather than looking to see if there's a connection between them.
Yeah, there's some very experienced detectives and supervising detectives in the Henderson area who I know. And believe me, I think if there was any chance that these were linked and there was something there, that would have been considered and they would have followed up if there was any information to follow up. And that's one of the things I think, these people go missing and then nobody knows where they are, nobody finds them, and they might find a bit of clothing here or a vehicle there. But what else is there? Do I say the suicide aspect? Who knows what the mental health of some of these people were at the time?
That seems to be kind of a common denominator, though, right? A lot of these people did have some sort of mental health struggles at the time. But, I mean, what are the chances that you've got 3 women that look very similar that go missing at, the same place, and there's no body? Nothing by air, nothing by sea, nothing by land. Doesn't that raise some questions?
Of course, you would have to look at that and say, hang on, are these linked? But then we just don't know. You can't jump to conclusions. I know the bodies haven't been found. Have they been buried? Have they been taken out? You just don't know. Where's the evidential leads to follow to try and establish exactly what's occurred? And, like people talk about people commit suicide and fall into the water and stuff like that. A lot of times I did a missing person case years ago back on Great Barrier. And one of the factors was what wind direction there was, because if the body starts out on the water before it sinks, the wind could blow it out to sea, which then gets the currents and the tides. And then you got sharks out there and stuff like that. I don't know. There's a number of possibilities.
Absolutely. I think that's right. And I like the police approach of an open mind, because miscarriages of justice, which we're worried about, happen when police have a view. And so I like that Scott keeps saying, we just don't know, we can't say. So I do appreciate that. But I'd like to know, what's the word in police town at the police bar when you're talking about it? Do police between yourselves just casually go, man, there could be someone out there,
Well, there are no police bars now.
Oh, didn't know that.
That's the past, way back. And dare I say, it is busy enough for staff with their uniform, CIB, right across the board. And, within Auckland City District, we had, 23 homicides in 2 years.
There's always chat, though.
Yeah, and there's always those cases that you just can't sort of let go, and you keep talking about and you keep coming back to.
Is there that conspiracy theorist cop on somebody's section that's like, guys, really, I think there is something going on out here?
Oh, look, I'm sure across the police, particularly in the district, they'll have various views and thoughts.
More disturbing, I think, than the deaths, because they can all be all explained away by accidents or suicide. But is that there's a lot of reports of maybe a serial stalker or serial rapist out there. There's a lot of women that say that they were chased in the bushes or that they heard footsteps behind them and that it's a regular thing. So lots of people say, oh, look, it's not true that there's a serial killer. That's what conspiracy theorists are saying, but I certainly wouldn't go walking in that area.
You'd have to take heed of that. You'd have to throw that into the mix of, okay, what's happened to this person? What are we going to look for? Okay, is there someone out there? Because you can't rule out because we don't know.
Have you seen the TV3 docuseries or any of that?
No, I don't watch
that sort of shit.
Not these true crime stuff.
I'm
No way.
I'm too busy.
I guess there's just quite a few stories about women out there saying they've been stalked, and then if you talk to anyone in Piha, they have heard, and people in Piha think they know who the suspects are. They think they know
which house it is. Or...
And so there's just suspicion is rife around there, and communities feel like they're being shut down, and there's links to drugs. How involved are the police in this, or do you think that's just all the local nutters?
I have a number of cold case homicides, and every now and then we get some information come in, and we follow it up. So if these people have provided that information, I would have thought that the police in the district would have followed that up.
Even if it's a nutter, do they still follow it up?
We get psychics who will contact us and say, hey, this name's come to me.
Any of the cases that you've dealt with in your 40-odd years, has a psychic ever helped solve a case?
I've had a lot of cases where the psychics have come on board, but no, we've had nothing that's ultimately resolved a case.
So overall, even with this sort of stalking and maybe serial rapists, you don't think that there's anything, and the police don't think there's anything to worry or gossip about out there in Piha?
So I don't know the finer details. I've only seen what's in the media, the fact, these people were seen, and I would just, knowing some of the staff out there, the supervisors out there, that if there was a connection and there was something to follow up, they would follow that up.
Yeah, they know what they're doing out there, is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the Waitakaris as well. How many people, bodies have buried in the Waitakaris over the years, and I'm aware of a number.
Like how many?
Oh, I think about 3 or 4. I know.
So, like bodies found there, or just people going missing in the Waitaks?
Bodies being found in the Waitaks. Yeah.
There's no rumour of a Waitakere killer other than Jesse Gibson, obviously.
No, but they were all different, different times, different scenarios, and some of the offenders have been caught.
But the bodies have all been found for those missing people?
Yeah.
That's more of a favourite body dumping facility.
Yeah. It's remote, these opportunities.
Yeah, I'm not super keen to go walking in the Waitakaris on my own either, to be honest.
And don't want to go to Piha, actually.
Yeah, just 2 places to avoid.
It was all about stranger danger and keeping ourselves safe.
Use safer communities together.
Yeah.
Always blow on the pie.
Always blow on the pie.
So I guess the conclusion would be, don't worry about it. Even if we do get one in New Zealand, the police will
catch them.
and even more so now, maybe not quite in the 80s, but definitely in the 2020s, you'd catch them real fast.
Yeah, I'm not going to say catch them really fast. We would definitely catch them. And technology, both DNA and CCTV, all that stuff. And
blood, sweat, and very tired police officers working around the clock. So would our conclusion be we haven't had serial killers in New Zealand?
But a couple close to it.
Yes.
But the police have caught them before they became serial killers.
Yeah. And if there are going to be future serial killers, good luck to them. That'd be a good time for us to try and get deals for our clients, Sumudu, on lower charges. It would be like the police are all engaged in catching a serial killer.
Absolutely. Let's get some deals and sort this out now. They've got bigger fish to fry.
Well, Scott, thank you very much. That's been very enlightening, and I feel a little bit comforted by your words as well. Thank you very much for giving up your time to be on the show tonight. We know you're very busy.
No, it was my pleasure. Thank you. I think it's a great topic to talk about.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott. We really appreciate it.
Well, good.
It was hard to really press Scott in particular on this issue because he doesn't work out there. But have police really looked at whether if there's a stalker and there's somebody that's possibly serial raping going out there, because there's a lot of talk of women being attacked, and then there's women going missing, wouldn't that be a join the dots situation?
I mean, I guess what Scott's saying is, if there was any evidence, the police would have found it. So there's no evidence other than, and that's, I suppose, what the filmmakers are trying to say as well, other than people's accounts, there's no other evidence to back up what they're saying.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't know if there's cameras out there. I don't know if they've looked at CCTV or looked at, registration numbers of these cars, or, I don't know what investigations they've done.
Well, you have to assume they've looked at anything if people have been going to them. People out there have talked about thinking they know who it is, saying that there are women's groups that have been abused.
There's probably Facebook groups.
Yeah, there's definitely Reddit. I mean, I had a little look at Reddit today, and it's a mixture of crazy people and anti-vax types mixed with actually people making a lot of sense who are like, well, I've been living out here for years, and these are 4 things that did happen, and I personally wouldn't let my daughter go running up there.
Well, you and I wouldn't go running out there.
Those running tracks aren't close to the cliff, really.
Yeah.
These things are all written off as, well, it's a dangerous climate out there, and plus these guys are suicidal. And it's like...
chances are they just fell off a cliff and just slipped
because
their
they
leg,
were so depressed and all killed
because
themselves.
they were drinking wine on a cliff halfway through their run. I mean,
and it's
do
like,
that?
sorry, what? Like... First of all, those running tracks are really quite safe if you look at them. Like if you take just an aerial view. So I actually would run on any of those running tracks, to be honest, because it's not like they're perilously close to the cliff.
I read somewhere that there was one woman, she was asking her husband to take a photo or something on one of those cliffs. Yeah. And then her foot slipped and she fell off the cliff and she did die. They did find her body. And it was very close to where Cherie Wooston and Kim Bambus went missing. Like it was the same running track. But what they were saying is on that cliff, if you did fall, because of the way the cliff is, like you wouldn't fall straight into the water. So like your body wouldn't get washed away. Her body was found down the cliff. But if these women did fall by accident, their body would be found.
Yeah, and that seemed to be what Scott was saying tonight. Like they sort of at least would look into tides and all that. So
yeah, to me, it just doesn't make sense that, I mean, there's 3 women and 3 men that had been missing, but the 3 women, they're all brunette, beautiful women who are all in the same area, and they go missing in very similar circumstances. And none of their bodies are found. Like, bodies that go in the water. As a general rule, I mean, you and I know, having done homicides, bodies float after a certain time. Yeah. And, there's boats out there, there's fishermen out there. They had aerial searches, so it's not like they wouldn't have found the body if it ended up in the water.
Yes, you're right. It feels weird that 3 wouldn't have, and then there's no link, and no one's thought something bad's going on out here. Like, it just doesn't seem to have caught anyone's attention other than some locals, which also can be written off as crazy people.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's just local, because I spoke to 2 people who, have some links to the West, and they're like, I know about this. And I was like, how? Like, it wasn't even a conversation starter. It was like, this is just common knowledge.
So this is what made me want to talk about it, was because I spoke to literally really credible, scientifically based people that are not drama queens, who were like, oh no, someone out there is killing and raping women and definitely stalking them. And I was like, sorry, what? You don't mean this is just the anti-vaxxer people coming out And they were like, no, someone's killing people out there. Like, people genuinely believe it.
It's a vibe thing, right? Like, that's what I kind of got. It's like this eerie feeling. And they're like, no, I genuinely believe that there is a serial killer.
Or at least a serial stalker / raper. All right, Sumudu, well, that wraps that up. I think what was good about that is it was a really positive look at the New Zealand police. And we've had some of our previous podcasts where we've been a little bit critical, mainly in particular of the Victoria Police. So it was actually nice to present our listeners with a police positive podcast for once. That sounds a bit like sex positive, police positive.
It was just nice to have a, sex positive, police positive story.
Generally speaking, it was very nice to see and meet Scott Beard in person.
It was, and it's good to know that they're going to protect us from serial killers.
Yeah.
Well, that's us for tonight. Thank you for listening, and thank you to LexisNexis, our sponsor.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening this far. Today's episode is brought to you by LexisNexis. Your LexisNexis legal research and AI technology experience is now even more powerful with Lexis Plus AI, now with Protégé, your personalized AI assistant that will transform your legal work. Find out more today at lexisnexis.co.nz.